Get ready to dive deep into one of the most gripping legal battles of our time. I'm your host, Jim Chapman, and today we're unraveling the high-stakes drama surrounding one of the music industry's most enigmatic figures, Sean-Diddy-Combs. In a case that has captivated millions, the courtroom has become a battleground for fame, fortune, and the dark secrets that lurk beneath the glittering surface of celebrity life. As the gavel comes down, we'll explore the allegations, the testimonies, and the shocking twists that could change the course of Diddy's legacy forever. Was this case merely a clash of lifestyles or something much more sinister? With each episode, I will bring you exclusive insights, analysis, and witness testimony accounts that will leave you on the edge of your seat. So buckle up as we embark on this thrilling ride through the trial of the century, where the stakes are high, the drama is real, and the truth is anything but certain. This is the trial of Sean Combs. Let's get started. Okay, before we get into today's episode, just quickly, we need to talk about the dismissal of juror number 6, because this is now playing out to become a very racially charged issue by the defense. So let me explain. Yesterday, I told you the judge had made a decision, and he decided to release juror number 6, basically kick him off the jury. Now, this action was not taken lightly for numerous reasons. One of those, even though they'll never admit to this, I'm sure there was a major consideration that this juror was black and was being replaced by a white juror. So I'm going to give you some details quickly on what happened. Now, when it all shook out, the judge decided this particular jury member had too many conflicting statements about his residence. And that raised some serious concerns because federal law mandates that jurors must reside in the district where the court is taking place for at least a year. The problem was this juror was telling numerous people several different stories of where he lived. For example, he said he lived in the Bronx, which is where court was taking place. But later, he tells a court staff member that he spends a lot of time in New Jersey, which is a whole nother state, right? And he told other people different stories as well. It was brought to the judge's attention by the prosecution, and after a week of going back and forth between prosecutors and the defense, he was dismissed. Incidentally, 41-year-old black man, and he was replaced by an alternate, which is a 57-year-old white man. And of course, as you would expect, when this occurred, Diddy's team immediately moved for a mistrial, and that's not going to happen. Everybody, I'm sure, could see that coming, but man, does this create a wide open path for an appeal should Diddy be found guilty. So that is the up-to-date news on that, and we're going to get into today's episode, and I'm going to start with catching you up on what occurred with the testimony I brought you yesterday, Thursday, June 12th, just a highlight of that. In Thursday's testimony, Jane testified again about the physical altercation that she and Combs had in 2024 over a woman she believed Combs was spending time with on a trip. Now, she was quoted as saying, "At this point, I had just reached my breaking point in the relationship." Jane testified that after things escalated, she called the woman from Combs' phone and the two traded insults back and forth. She also said Combs FaceTimed his assistant, Jonathan, and Jonathan told Jane the woman did not go on that trip. Jane testified the reason she sent Combs affectionate text messages after a 2023 Turks and Caicos trip, which she had described previously as disappointing, was because of a confusing cycle in which Combs would shower her with love and affection, and she said she was able to compartmentalize all the bad stuff and focus on the good stuff. Now, when asked why she brought up hotel nights to Combs during discussions about other women in his life, Jane testified she was trying to express, quote, "Why do I have to be degraded in order to be with you?" She added she was trying to say, "Why do I have to break all my boundaries and compromise myself? But they can still experience you the way that they want to." Jane testified she began telling Combs she did not want to participate in hotel nights in 2021, but said she became more vocal about this in 2023. She said by then Combs had been paying her rent for several months and would often mention her rent in connection with hotel nights. Jane added that Combs threatened to stop paying her rent in all kinds of different ways. So that's a highlight of what occurred, and we're back with the testimony for Friday, June 13th. And Jane is finally off the stand after a full week of testimony, and Homeland Security Investigator Special Agent Andre Lamont gets called to the stand. Prosecutor Meredith Foster is handling the direct examination. Now, Lamont was part of a team that searched Diddy's LA home. The jury gets shown some photos of items that authorities say were found in nightstands in the master bedroom of Diddy's home during that March 2024 search. One of the nightstands contained 6 manila envelopes marked with a K. He also said a white powder in the bags that they found tested positive for ketamine. Lamont also said that several cell phones were found throughout the house. The jury then gets shown photos of items that were inside a safe in one of the master closets. The photos showed Combs' passport in a plastic bag and another plastic bag with a brown substance. When asked about it, Lamont said that brown substance tested positive for MDMA. Lamont said HSI recovered about 200 bottles of baby oil and 900 bottles of personal lubricant from Diddy's residence. And the jury saw a photo of at least 16 boxes full of lube piled in Combs' garage. The jury also saw a photo of a bag of baby oil and lubricant next to the lingerie recovered from a closet near a master bedroom. The jury saw photos of 6 firearms, magazines, and ammunition found in a security room in the home, and Special Agent Lamont testified when he arrived, agents responsible for securing the home had already laid the firearms out and removed the magazines. That's standard procedure, he said. The agent also said in the security room they had a firearm safe, and in that safe, agents also found 2 locks and a bag. Now, 4 of the guns were rifles, 1 was a pistol, and 1 was a shotgun, according to the agent. Lamont also testified the serial number on one of the rifles appeared to have been scratched or sanded off. Agents also received a drum magazine compatible with the rifles. And a drum magazine, y'all, is a circular magazine like you would see in the old-time crime films. It's round in shape. Lamont testified the drum magazines typically hold larger amounts of ammunition, and this magazine could hold 60 rounds, and 59 rounds of green tip ammunition were found inside that magazine. He said that the green tip ammo is designed to penetrate body armor. And with that, the prosecution was done with him, and the defense took over.
Jim, did you see what happened in Texas today?
Wait, before you tell me that, let me tell you what happened in New York.
It cannot be as crazy as the case I told you about yesterday in Louisiana.
You know what? We should do a podcast about it.
And with that, we did. Crime Wire Weekly covers the crime news headlines that have dominated the week.
We cover trending crimes from all over the country and even sprinkle in a few globally.
Crime Wire Weekly is available now wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Simply by searching Crime Wire Weekly or clicking the link in the description of this podcast. Lamont confirmed with the defense that a security team protected Combs' residence and there's a designated security room where the firearms were recovered. He said no guns or ammunition were found anywhere in the home other than that security office. Lamont testified that a special response team cleared Sean Combs' home first to make sure it was safe for other agents to enter during that raid. He said the team's, quote, sole purpose upon entering the location is to look for people, or if they encounter weapons, to make weapons safe. He said the team does not typically take photos of items on the property. Because of that, Lamont said he didn't know if the guns that were found inside the safe, if the safe was locked or if the door to the security room was locked when the agents first arrived at the home. So at this point, the court takes a short break. And on that break, something pretty wild happens. Kanye-West, or Ye, if you want to call him that, he arrives. He's dressed in all white. He's wearing sunglasses. Now, West had been in touch with Diddy's family about possibly attending Combs' trial to show his support. As he was walking in, he nodded and said yes when a reporter asked if he was there to support Combs. But he didn't answer other questions to reporters, and he was directed to what's known as an overflow room during that break. So the break ends, and when everyone gets back into the courtroom, and just prior to the jury being allowed back in, Comey brings up an issue with the judge, saying during the defense's cross-examination of that agent, Combs was nodding emphatically, and that he was also nodding during some of Jane's cross-examination earlier that week, saying, quote, even if Combs is not looking directly at the jury, he should not be nodding like that. Defense attorney Brian Steele then said Combs hasn't been looking at the jury and has been acting professionally. Quote, Mr. Combs did nothing inappropriate at all today or any day, actually. The judge referenced a discussion the lawyers had last week that I told you about, saying that Combs does not need to be nodding or seemingly agreeing with what people are saying. He said he believes both sides have since made the boundaries clear to their respective teams. Quote, there's going to be some amount of reaction to the testimony that's given, and it's impossible to police every reaction from every person in this courtroom. He then addressed Combs and said no one should be attempting to influence the jury, to which Combs nodded in agreement with the judge. Comey clarified she was not seeking corrective instruction or suggesting Combs should be removed from the courtroom, but thought it was inappropriate for him to be nodding while his attorney is asking a witness yes or no questions. So they have that discussion for a little while. They come to an agreement that he shouldn't be nodding. And then at that point, the jury's let back in, and the next witness is called. That is Jonathan Perez, a former personal assistant to Sean Combs. He worked with Combs between December of 2021 and September of 2024, and he's another witness that is going to testify under that immunity order. Remember, several people have been given immunity to testify, otherwise they were going to plead the fifth. He's another one. Actually, he's the fourth to testify under immunity at this trial. And he starts off by testifying that his starting annual salary was $85,000 and it was later bumped up to $100,000. He said Christina Coram, then Combs' chief of staff, was his direct supervisor. Perez said Coram and Combs seemed to have a good working relationship, and some days it seemed that they had a good personal relationship. Perez said typical hours were 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., and another personal assistant would work the night shift once he was finished. Combs typically had 3 or 4 personal assistants, he said. He also testified that Coram made him aware of what was known as king nights, which Perez described as Combs going to a hotel to have private time with a female. Then the prosecution asked him about his knowledge of Jane, and he described her as a female friend and companion, and then he said, "I'm not really sure exactly what to call her." He said Combs' staff would get anywhere from 2 hours to a full day's notice to set up a king night. And he testified about staff members setting up the key nights. He said whichever assistant was working in the evening would typically set up those nights. Perez typically worked during the day, so he estimated that he set up only about 5 king nights for Combs during his time there. He said it was a lot of packing materials, making sure that he was going to have everything needed for 12 to 24 hours without having to bother anybody. Perez brought food, liquor, music, red lights, condoms, lubricant, and sometimes honey, he said. And he said that honey is known to enhance the man's libido. Perez said he sometimes also went to sex stores to purchase adult outfits and high heels. He would pay for the items on his company card or with cash he got from security. He also said he cleaned up after the keen nights, saying the rooms would be just a bit of a mess and in disarray. He was quoted as saying just like lots of sheets and towels and oils. Perez said his main purpose of cleaning up was to make sure no items were left behind. He testified that Combs and his guests would be tired when he saw them after a king night. Combs' staff would typically arrange for a meal, a massage, or an IV drip for Combs after a king night, he also said. The jury was then shown messages that Perez sent to Combs and Jane on August 12th of 2023 involving information about a hotel room. Quote, "Just left 2 candles and room phone in front of room door. I'm only 9 minutes away if y'all need anything," he wrote in those messages. The jury also saw messages between then Combs' chief of staff, Christina-Combs, Perez, and another assistant about setting up a hotel room. In those messages, Combs asked if the room was done, and Perez said he was going to run to the store and get outfits for Jane. In another conversation seen in court from May of 2023, Combs asked another assistant how cleanup was going. Quote, "Slipped and fell twice," the assistant responded. Perez recounted a time at Combs' LA home when Combs' videographer found a video of Jane and another man engaging in sex. Perez said the video was on an iPad, usually used by Combs' staff, and Combs could be seen in the background. Perez said he took the iPad and told Combs and Christina-Combs separately about that video that day. He testified that Combs seemed surprised when he told him about the video, and Combs told Perez the next time he should give the footage directly to her and she would deal with Combs. About 6 months later, Combs questioned Perez about the video and how it was found. She told Perez she had got a call from someone outside the company talking about the video in some capacity. And it was also mentioned that a recording of that conversation was recovered from Combs' phone, which was seized in 2024. Perez testified he didn't know he was being recorded at the time, and the jury is now hearing that recording. And at that point, the prosecution played that recording for the jury. The jury heard a recording in which Christina-Combs questioned Perez about the discovery of that video of Jane with another man. And the discussion centered around how the video was found. Combs told Perez she got a call from someone outside the company. They were talking about the video in some capacity. And in that recording, Combs asked Perez to tell her step by step about what happened when the video was found on that iPad because, quote, "an outside person brought up something about it." Now, in the recording, Perez said a videographer found the video first and then he saw it. Perez then told her that once he saw the video, he told Combs, quote, "Hey, I found something on the iPad that the staff uses. I can lock it up for you, or you can delete it. I just wanted to let you know so you can make that decision." He told Combs that Combs then deleted the video. In the recording, Perez told Combs he didn't have any other conversations about the video. He also referenced an investigation. Perez testified that Combs thought his phone or data might have been compromised, and KK, which is how they referred to Christina-Combs, mentioned that Combs wanted an investigation to happen regarding the video and how it got on that device. Perez said that he didn't know if an investigation ever actually happened, and he's talking about an interior investigation of Diddy's. Also in that recording, Perez told Combs that he thought the video looked like it was set up and filmed on that iPad. Perez said he never spoke to Combs about it again, but at some point after that, Combs' head of security, Fahim Muhammad, asked him about the day that the video was found. Perez testified he relayed the same story he told Combs, and it never came up again. Perez testified that Combs' chef, Chef K, was also in the room when the video was found, but he didn't mention to anyone because he had named her in his first account, and he was hoping the incident wouldn't become a big deal. Prosecutor Madison Smizer then showed the jury a photo of a Gucci pouch. When asked about it, Perez said the pouch belonged to Combs and it was typically filled with drugs and money. He said that Combs always had it with him during King nights. The jury also saw messages between Perez and another assistant. This is from July of 2022. And in those messages, the other assistant told Perez to look for that Gucci pouch in the bathroom, and if anything was outside of it, to put it back in. Quote, I zipped it up, no residue on it, and I didn't steal one Addy, talking about Adderall. Then in other messages between Perez and other assistants in October of 2022, Perez said that cocaine was found in a different bag and that it should have never left that Gucci pouch. He testified that he obtained drugs for Combs on a handful of occasions. He said he got drugs including Xanax, cocaine, and Molly from someone named Guido and also someone named Baby Girl. He would pay for the drugs with cash that he either got from Combs' security personnel, the Gucci pouch, or a top drawer. The jury was then shown a message that, according to prosecutors, Perez sent to one of Combs' security guards, Fahim. This was in February of 2024. In that message, Perez said in part, $700 went to Guido. He also testified that he dropped off items at Jane's house to set up for her night with Combs. This was on June 18th of 2024, and then later dropped off Combs at that residence. He said a few hours later, Combs called him on FaceTime, seemed angry and annoyed, and his voice was raised. Quote, he was asking me to confirm whether or not another female had been on a trip we went on a week prior. Perez told Combs no, and Combs thanked him before hanging up. Perez testified he did see Jane on the FaceTime call, but he said her back was to the camera, so he never saw her face, and she didn't speak. The call lasted about 20 seconds, he said. The jury then saw messages between Perez, Christina Coram, and Fahim. This was around June 18th of 2024. Quote, heads up, him and the guest are fighting. I'm about to be heading back and picking him up, Perez texted them. Perez also told Fahim that Combs wanted him to bring cash. Then, in a separate group message with Combs, Fahim and Perez said, quote, need $3,500 ASAP for this guest. I'm going to take it to her. Perez testified he was referring to Jane in those messages. Smizer then asked Perez why he stopped working for Combs. This was in September of 2024. He was quoted as saying, there was a lot going on personally for Mr. Combs, and there wasn't a lot of communication about what was happening, so I thought it was a good time to leave and hopefully avoid a situation like I'm in now. He testified the last time he talked to Combs was the day before he was arrested. Smizer asked Perez how he feels about Combs now, and Perez responded, I feel great about him, the same way I felt about him when I was leaving my employment. And with that, prosecutors were finished with their direct of Jonathan Perez, and defense attorney Brian Steele, he starts his cross-examination. And they start off by confirming with Perez that he still respects Combs. And Perez confirmed that. Steele then asked Jonathan Perez whether he would sometimes do things of a personal nature for Sean Combs, even if it wasn't part of his employment. And Perez agreed. Perez agreed that setting up King's nights and purchasing drugs would be classified as personal instead of work-related. I got to agree with that. He confirmed that it had nothing to do with his work, and he didn't believe he was getting paid to do those things. Steele then asked Perez about his interactions with Jane, and Perez confirmed that he would help Jane pick out lingerie, heels, and dresses for her. Perez said that Jane trusted him with his opinion of what to buy, and Steele asked Perez if Jane ever appeared hesitant to go to a King night, and he said no. Steele then asked Perez to confirm that Jane seemed like a willing participant on those King nights, and Perez said yes. Perez also confirmed when asked that Jane never seemed upset or unhappy after a King night. And Steele then turned to Perez's previous testimony about a staffer finding that iPad at Combs' LA home and that video of Jane and another man having sex on that iPad. And Steele asked Perez if the concern about the video centered around the fact that a personal private sex tape was on a business iPad. And Perez agreed with that statement. Perez estimated that he spent about 1% of his time working for Combs dealing with personal matters like setting up King nights and obtaining drugs. And when asked about Combs' understanding of technology, Perez said, quote, "He was not the most proficient when it came to technology, so we set up all the technology stuff for him." And Perez confirmed that Diddy and the people close to the rapper never told him not to speak about things such as King nights or drugs. He actually went on to say they only told him to tell the truth. He also confirmed that he never saw Combs strike a woman or anyone else. Now, Perez's previous disclosure in court was that he sometimes used his company card to buy personal items for Diddy, like outfits for Jane at what he termed sex stores. Perez testified he didn't know whether those charges on the card were paid off with company funds or Combs' personal money. Steele then showed the jury a series of texts from different times throughout Jonathan Perez's employment, in which Jane talked to Perez before and after King nights. In some of those texts, they planned for King nights, including packing items like underwear. In other messages, they would discuss tasks for Perez to do for her or Sean Combs, and Steele asked Perez to confirm that on all of these occasions, she didn't seem upset in those messages. And he confirmed that. And with that, that was all the defense had. The prosecution then did a short redirect of Perez, but it was nothing significant that was covered. The jury was dismissed for Friday, June 13th. Thank you so much for listening. Check out the Patreon, commercial-free early releases, bonus episodes, quarterly gifts, all kinds of stuff. Patreon.com/exposed podcast files. Quickly, if you have not yet followed Crime Wire Weekly, it's a podcast I do with Unspeakable's award-winning podcast host, Kelly Jennings. We drop new episodes every Friday, and we basically talk about the week in true crime headlines from all over the country. We cover some stuff that is really trending, and we give our personal commentary on those stories. Check it out. All you got to do is go to whatever app you're listening to this podcast on and punch in Crime Wire Weekly, and it'll pull up. And until next time, for Exposed Scandalous Files of the Elite, I'm your host, Jim Chapman. Much love.